What's going on, everybody? It's your girl Pam with 2200 Taps. I am joined by our sister-in-arms, fellow podcaster, and amazing lady, Dee Tox, from Bullets to Bedpans. And we're kind of like sharing this episode together. So she's gonna launch it on on their platform, and I'm gonna launch it on mine. So
Yeah,
we're literally shooting off the hip with this, guys. There was no planning other than, do you want to jump on?
I'm
So
jumping on.
let's
And we're
go.
just gonna
So
do it, right?
you want to do your intro now?
Yeah, like, hey
Since I love
everyone. My turn, my turn.
it.
Hey everyone, it's Bullets and Bedpans, and it is Dee Tox, and MZ is out. I told you guys she's been out for a little while doing some education. She's finishing her degree and she's keeping up
Good for
with
her.
family. Yeah, she's amazing. And so I said, hey, let's just give you a break here. So I've been running the show for a little bit and pulling guest hosts, and then this one
Hmm.
came up and I'm like, oh, this needs to be a Pam and Detox one.
Oh, this is fun. Thank you for inviting me. We had to reschedule before, but and now we're here and we've got a good amount of time to
We
really
do.
and see where this goes. And I'm
We
happy to be on your show.
we
And
should start from the beginning of this, right? So the beginning is like, well, your background and my background kind of run in similar circles. Yours is much
mm.
cooler than mine, sort of.
I
You more, I'll
don't know
say,
about
cooler
that.
and more interesting. Well, your background, because we always talk with our guests, right? And we're always finding out about them. We don't really talk about ourselves, but I tell people nothing ever starts without a story.
Yeah.
Right. So whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's the podcast we're doing, we don't just randomly go, I'm just
Mm-mm.
going to start a podcast. Like, we have some history, right?
Some people
So
do.
some people do.
Some people do.
Pam's like, I just start things.
Uh,
Um,
um,
but what was your military background? You were a coastie, right?
I was a coastie. I'm the forgotten one, the redheaded stepchildren that everybody forgets, which
The
is
cousins of the military.
it's whatever, dude. We're cool.
We love you. We still
Well,
call you our own, your cousins. You're just under Homeland Security. That's the difference, not
well,
DOD.
it's funny because I had an instructor tell my I can't even I can't even say, believe I'm about to say this, but my asshole father, who I sort of never really talk about again on these platforms because he doesn't deserve it. I will say this. I had an instructor tell him, because he was prior service. He said the difference between the other branches and the Coast Guard, the other branches train to do the mission. That way, in times of war, they do the mission. And then when it's at peacetime, you're just training, literally. But with us, we do the mission every day, whether you're at peacetime or not. And he said that's what makes us really cool. And we're
Yeah,
so small. When I enlisted in '03, my recruiter said there were more New York City police officers than there were people in the Coast Guard.
I believe it.
That's how small we are. And
Yeah.
because of that, we have to wear like 4 or 5 different hats because you're small. You got to pull a lot of weight, and you have a lot of jobs, and you got to be very diverse. So I failed out of college in '02. I had a scholarship to play ball, and I failed out of college, and I enlisted in the Coast Guard because I hated school. And the first thing they did when I reported in my first unit was they gave me a stack of books, and they said, "Get to reading. You got X, Y, and Z amount of time to get qualified. Go." I was like, God dang it, here we go again. And it forced me to grow up, and
Quick.
primarily did search and rescue most
That's
of my
the cool
time in.
part.
It's cool. I mean, it's cool, but it's not. Like, I mean, you know as well as I do, like every job has its good times and its bad times. And
Oh, yeah.
when you're a first responder, you understand that there's a possibility you're going to be exposed to bodies or this or that or this. And I had a decent career. I didn't have to be exposed to terribly much until I got sent to New York City in '04 for the Republican National Convention and the third anniversary in 9/11. MARSEC security level went up for its maritime security level.
Yeah.
It went up a level like a year prior, and they had coasties running like security on the water 24/7 for almost a year and a half or so, a couple of years before they shut that down. But we all had to get the Coast Guard station Staten Island needed help, so we ran their platforms 24/7. They
But I
brought in
saw a lot
crews.
there.
Oh man, there's so
Yeah.
much to happen in New York. The water's nasty. I saw needles and condoms and nasty shit in the water. But we went, that aside, we did go because it was the third anniversary 9/11. I worked alongside people that were there on 9/11. We lost a reservist there on 9/11, and it was very surreal because there was a big hole still at ground zero.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was 22 years old at the time, and I got very paranoid. It caused me to get very paranoid, very hyper vigilant, very like at any given time something could happen because that's, put it this way, and then I'll stop sharing real quick. But
It's new
my
level of awareness too.
my yeah, the lieutenant at the station, he was the OIC, the officer in charge. He had to get on every platform because they're his boats, that's his unit, and he had to make sure everybody that was getting sent there knew what the hell they were doing. So we had to do a check ride, and basically all that is like he's checking to make sure we know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and we're qualified.
Right.
And once we do the check ride, we're good to operate the platforms. And before we started our check ride, station Staten Island's right, not under the Verrazano Bridge, but just a little north. And before we started, he said, "Hey, those kayakers over there by the bridge, we're going to board them." And he looked at me. He said, "If they pull out a gun, shoot them." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay," because he was there
Sure.
during 9/11, and I mean, you just do what you're told at that point.
Yep.
I was like, "These are kayakers, huh?" But that was also the time people were putting stuff under the bridges and blowing stuff up. We had a lot of crazy intel. Like I got very paranoid.
I bet.
And then fast forward to 2012, I worked the worst search and rescue case of my entire career. And it, can we curse or no?
Yes.
Yeah, it fucked me up pretty bad.
Yeah.
And really, really bad to the point where I was scared of water. And
Oh
just
wow.
now, I'm starting to get, like the thought of jumping in feet first is actually not as scary as it used to be because of that. So
That's progress, girl.
yeah. Well, I'm headed to Boston soon for outpatient treatment for this stuff and some other stuff that we got going on. So yeah, it was fun. I got my ass kicked. My body's all fucked up from it. But I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat.
Right.
I miss it. I miss the adrenaline, little adrenaline junkie. So
You and
what
me.
about you? Tell me about you. I mean, my listeners know all about me, but what about you?
Yeah, we talked about us and on our side too in the beginning, but I country girl. I'm a country girl. I
Mm-hmm.
grew up on 600 acres of land my grandfather owned. We had a farm.
Did you
I got
really?
yeah.
Do you dip? Did you ever dip?
No, I never dipped. I never
You
did.
ain't that country. Oh no, that's hillbilly. Never mind. I'm confused.
I'm gonna tell you, it if you went in some areas where we grew up, there's some of that going on. Don't worry about that. Yeah, no, and yeah, I mean, I had a pet bull at age 5. I don't know how many little girls get a pet bull at age 5, but I did. A year later, it was on my table because and you can't have
What?
multiple. You when you are we had a dairy farm, my grandfather did, and you can't
Mm,
have multiple bulls because
man, I
they'll
have a
fight.
rule. I have a rule.
Yeah,
You don't eat family. You
yeah.
don't
Well,
eat
when
family.
you don't know it and you're 5, that's what's happening. Yeah.
Dang.
I'm not sure I can consciously do that one. Yeah. I did. I used to walk them and brush them. And oh yeah, I don't know who allows a 5-year-old to walk a baby bull around, but here I am. Proof living proof. But yeah, grew up in very country, lots of open space kind of thing. But I was very antsy. I wanted to go see the world. And so I went to college and I literally picked my degree based on what would let me travel. And I was like, nursing, pick the hardest undergrad. Why not? And so did that. And then I landed in a very weird situation where when I came into college, they were like, you can write your ticket. It's like now, like you can get a job. I mean, it's really, there's a need. And within 3 years, they're like cutting graduate nurse programs. There was we'd send resumes out and they would send them back and they'd have notes on it that say, don't have your friends send it, don't waste their money, because we used
Oh
to mail
wow.
things back then. And I was a little older. And so yeah, we did that. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I say I'm not putting all that effort in to get rejected. Like it's not happening. And
Yeah.
then it's like, what do I want? Like I want to travel. I want excitement. I'm also a little adrenaline junkie. And I was like, And it was either the Peace Corps or the military. And then the military won out because I was so tired of being so poor and I was hungry. Like you can only eat so much ramen noodle. And so I did. I jumped in. I watched. We have no big family history. My brother actually did retire military, but prior to that, my dad was drafted for a couple years Vietnam, and there's no real big ties to military. And so off I went. I'm like, yep, I'm joining. And little did I know that would turn into a 21-year career, and retired about 3 years ago. Yeah, that was crazy, and got to do some really cool things. And like you, I hadn't seen. I've seen my share. There were some things that definitely stick with me. I know there's some things I probably blocked out. Just why not?
Yeah.
Like why relive it over and over, right? But I think probably one of the coolest jobs I got to do in the military was flight nurse. And I was kind of one of the lucky ones. I got to recover the USS Cole. That was pretty cool. So saw a lot at that. But yeah, I did that. And then my last 8 years was probably more traumatic than any operational level stuff I did. I was like, this is staffer world I ended up in. I was like, this is insane. And then retired and said, I never want another fucking boss again. Thank you very much. And in between all that, sometimes I can be very, sure, why not? Kind of impromptu. So during my last 5-6 years, within that time, I wrote a book, a military transition. I co-authored it. And then when I got out, it was right during COVID, right? Like literally the first 6 months of COVID. So wrote a book on that. Kind of funny. It's just a funny little book about my family and I just trying to survive toilet paper gate and all that. And then
that was real.
Yeah.
I was like ready to start using my socks.
Yeah. That like our neighbors were, I kid you not, our neighbors were all coming together like, hey, like I just had gone to Costco. And so if you need some rolls, we got it. They were all coming together on the street. Like,
you get a square. You get a square.
You're all good like that. Yeah. And then the weird thing was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of messed up when I came out. I was tired, I was worn out. I broke as a joke. You got diagnosed with fibro at the end. And I was like, God, I mean, I really felt like I had my ass handed to me.
Yeah.
And so that's what led. Now I'm going to turn it back to you after this, because I'm going to tell you what led to this. Was one summer I get a call, I get an email. Hey, we would like to interview you for your book. And I said, my book's not out yet. And they're like, the one that came out in 2017. I'm like, oh, my first book. Okay. And it's coming home well. Cindy, Cindy finds people. Yeah. Right. And so did the interview. I was on with Tyler, did the interview. It was cool, fun, great. I'd done some in the past, so I was like, yep, we're good. And then 4 months later, I get an email. Hey, could we talk? Sure. And this is Cindy. And you know how persuasive Cindy is. Yes, she's very persuasive.
She's awesome.
And she goes, so we're trying to increase our female population, our female audience. I'm like, oh, okay. We really think you'd be good to do podcasts. And I laughed. I burst out laughing. I was like, I'm a nurse. I'm like, I don't have a radio voice. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, you probably don't want me. I'm like, I can talk, but like, I don't have a voice. And then of course she's putting Cindy on. And just for the audience, all our audience, we adore Cindy. She's very persuasive when she wants to be. And I don't know, through the conversation, I was like, wait, could I have a co-host? And she goes, well, I was going to see if you wanted to. And I called up my buddy and I was like, want to do a podcast? He's like, 3 weeks later, we recorded the first one. So yeah, there you go. And here we are doing podcasts 2 years later.
Let me ask you this, because I'm like, you ever get podcast burnout?
The first season that we did podcasts, we went a year straight, like straight up. And it was actually, Cindy said, you guys need to take a break. I just had no creative thoughts. I'm like, who do I
Mhm.
talk to? And there's like 1,000, it's so easy to get people to come talk, so I
Yeah.
couldn't even think like that. So what we do, we record and we stop in May. And
And that's,
then whatever we've recorded up to that time keeps going out. And then we don't record again until like October. We take the summers off, and big difference.
yeah, that's actually smart. I need to do that. The thing is, you've got to record multiple episodes in preparation for that.
So yeah,
You
and
know,
it's how
and
you release them, right? So we
yeah.
release every other Wednesday. So
Mhm.
that's only 2 a month. And we do it on purpose because I have a business, kids, this, that,
Yeah.
running around, actually do 2 podcasts. So trying to do that. So if I record and can get those done like once a week, that's really 4 months. I mean, sorry, 2 months worth of podcasts. So
Yeah, that's smart. I get that. Like, I think I'm in the podcast burnout right now, but it's not because of the podcasting. It's because of my day job.
mm-hmm.
It's kicking my ass, and I'm like, man, the last thing I want to do is press record. But that's the first thing I want to do in the morning because I love it. I love everything
You're
about
good at it.
audio.
One of the first ones I
Oh, thank
heard when
you.
I was trying to figure this all out. And then, so we came under Coming Home Well, like early on. Like, I think they were just bringing some on and stuff. And then
Mhm.
I remember when they brought you on underneath them, and I started listening. I'm like, damn, like you have a good voice. My computer decided to talk to me. Um, yeah, I was like, oh, that's how it's done. You're
uh,
interesting. It's flow, right? It's all about
Thank
flow.
you. Thank you. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. All I know is we're just having conversations. And
Right.
that's literally all we're doing.
Literally. Yeah. Legit.
Um,
Absolutely legit. I mean, I always have like a path that we
right,
follow, and I
right.
know kind of where this needs to go, like points that we need to
Mhm.
hit. But other than that, I've had people come on, they're like, okay, could you send me talking points? I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, don't do that. And they're like, you're kidding. I'm like,
Mm-mm.
no, it kind of messes up
Mm-mm.
the whole flow. Like we
Mm-hmm.
talk, I go, I look up about you and I know where to go. We're good.
Same. I'll do some research on my guests. Most of the time they're people I already know, so I
Yeah.
kind of already know their story. And then the ones I don't, I'll read it on them or the
Pre-meet.
only
I do
yeah,
a
the only
pre-meet sometimes.
do you really?
Yeah, I'll do
I've
a
done that a couple times.
if we have like we have a couple coming up that they were like we have somebody coming up from Columbia University, like professor, kind of level researchers
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. And I will pre-meet some of them just so they understand, we understand, and I get their feel. And once I understand the
Mm-hmm.
energy, we're good.
That's good. Yeah. Well, like the only person that requested an outline was Taya Kyle's assistant. She's like, "Hey,
Oh,
we just need an outline of what you want to do." And I'm like, "All right, this is different. This is just a little different, but if that's all you need from me, I got you. Other
you're
than
the best
that,
one. You're one of your best, and I still rings in my head when you did the cruise family.
oh yeah.
On
Yeah, Tom
That's
and his wife
influencing
Heather.
a lot of stuff too, because there's some stuff in the work for November. And one of the things we were talking about was it's like educational. We're talking about different angles. And because of your podcast, I piped up and I said, how about talking about children as caregivers?
Hmm.
And that
Yeah.
was so I'm going to tell you guys on my side here, Ballistic by Pan. So, we talk about military medicine, military, the first responders, and we overlap into that civilian healthcare community. Um, and it's about us from our angle. Like, I don't care, in this podcast, I don't care about that patient. I care about like how you are doing with that.
Right.
How were you handling this stuff, right? But for the audience, I just want to say to you guys, like, you should hop over to Pam's podcast, 2200 Tap, because let me tell you, some of these interviews are like incredible. And what I like about it is that it's some really heavy stuff, but you know how to navigate it
Hmm.
without bringing it like you feel like you just want to go slit your throat somewhere. Like you
Yeah.
bring it in a way that like you can get that information and be like, damn, and see how they've come through it. And yeah,
Yeah.
I listened
No,
to that
no,
whole series, and when you interviewed their son, it blew my mind. I was like,
right? He's a little
that's
guy too.
yeah, that's to show the child's ability, his capability
Mm-hmm.
to have a level of understanding at his age
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make what's going on with his dad scary.
And what's crazy is I forget what episode number it is, but it's Heather and Tom Cruise and their son Holden.
Yeah.
They actually Tom does a lot of public speaking
Yes.
around mental health and stuff, but what they found out was his wife, they wanted to know like her perspective. So they were like, you know what, we're a family. This is a family thing, and then Holden has a really good understanding on like if daddy shows up this way, I know how to talk to him. And I don't know if you remember, but one of his little classmates was going through some stuff and he helped him.
I remember that. You're right.
Like
He had
how
enough
cool was
kind of
that?
emotional intelligence to pick up and go, "Hey, I've got some tools here for you."
Yeah, and I think he's like 10. I think he's
How
like
old
a
is he
little
now?
guy.
He's going to be older than that now, isn't he?
No, he's still a little guy. He's not even a
Oh,
teenager.
holy cow.
Yeah, and they'll travel to do public speaking as a family unit because like they said, this is a family
It's im-
dynamic.
it's important that it's brought
Hmm.
out that way, that
And it's
community part.
it's I'm getting goosey bumps over
Yeah,
here.
me too.
Yeah, I haven't seen Tom in a while, but they're here now. They're all together here in the Metroplex.
Oh, they're up
And
your way?
hmm
Oh,
yeah, yeah, they're finally she graduated with her I think nursing degree finally, and she's here. So they're together again because they were kind of like he
separate,
was he
yeah.
was he was
Commuting.
not yeah, they weren't separated like divorced. They were just separated because he was established here, she was still over there finishing up school, and now she's back, now they're together again, which is really special.
Yeah, that's a
um
pretty incredible podcast.
I'll have to
You know,
get
the
them.
other one I liked on yours was oh, it was one of your early ones. It was it was a female police officer. I don't know, she Asian lady, I think.
Oh, Kate,
Yeah, that was a good
The
one.
Asian persuasion.
Yes. That's what I was lifting that day when I was listening to that. And I was like, damn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she went undercover, and
Yes.
then yeah, that's Kate
She
Huang.
she the human spirit is I just
Hmm.
think is incredibly resilient when it's given the right tools.
And you know what's funny? That episode almost didn't air
Really? Why?
after the fact. It ruffled some feathers. Well, like after it, let me back up. After we aired it, it almost got taken down. That's what it was. It ruffled some
Oh, you
feathers,
know
and
what? Why do I remember that? I don't know if Cindy and I were
probably
talking
because we
about
were
it or
talking about it. Because, well,
yeah.
yeah, I had to tell Cindy like, hey, we may have to remove this from the show or whatever. And I
And she
talked to
was probably
Kate.
like, absolutely not.
Yeah, and I talked to Kate because Kate and I had to really talk through some of that stuff as to what was coming up and why this certain somebody wanted to take it down. And I was like, look, man, this is your story. This is your story. And in my opinion, it would be a disservice to people if you took your story down because it
Yeah,
could absolutely help somebody.
that's the
And
point.
it really has. So I'm glad Kate chose to just let us keep it up. And you
Kudos to
know,
you, Kate. You rock. I love that
Kate's
podcast.
she's so
Badass.
funny too. She's so funny.
And she's like what I love, she's like petite, this little
Hmm.
and man, and you see this petite built person with this gigantic size
Hmm.
strength, and it's like, don't fuck with her.
Mm-mm.
But she really, yeah.
Oh man. Well, you guys are doing pretty good with your show.
Yeah.
Listen to a couple episodes. I actually did your intro music when we were trying to figure
You
it out.
and
And
then
that
and
became
then
like a shit
we didn't
show.
use it. Oh my God. The
That's
story
funny.
behind I have never put so much work into producing, not well, like at least putting the rough part together. You
Yeah.
produced it. And then we put it out for some testing. And I was hesitant. I liked the music.
Mm.
I was hesitant if it was gonna fit right.
I didn't think it did.
No. And so I'm like, I wasn't feeling it. And I'm like, well, let's put it out there and test it. Oh Lord. Like I sent it out to people I knew. And one of my friends said, I almost didn't want to hit play. I was afraid what I was going to hear. And I'm like, yeah, no, no, no. And it wasn't in a good way. It wasn't in a curious way. It was in a, can my mental health withstand this?
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot there. I had a
We
buddy of mine
lightened
do
it.
a, yeah, I mean, y'all figured it out and y'all got what you needed, which is great. And
Yeah,
sometimes you need that. Not a lot of music, and I've done that with another friend's podcast. The intro music doesn't fit the show.
right,
And it's like me as a creator, I need to hear what the show is so I can
right.
see what you need or I can understand it, and we didn't get to do that with y'all because you didn't have a show yet. So it's a
Yeah,
little backwards.
it's me and my co-host, and I adore her. And she retired from the military, but I'll tell you, it's a fun podcast.
It's fun.
It is fun. We get to be
Man.
sassy. And I think in our first one of our early podcasts, we said anything goes because we want people to talk freely and to talk from their perspective. And Pam,
Mm-hmm.
as medical and military, it's dark humor, it's
Mm-hmm.
warped, it's we don't, we can make turn some heads at a dinner table like nobody's business. Like, okay. And so we were in this interview, we were talking about workplace violence, and somehow Crocs got brought up. I don't remember.
Oh
And
boy.
he goes, hey, I have a joke about Crocs, but it might be inappropriate. I'm like, oh, go for it. And I still can't remember the joke, but I knew it had something to do with blowjobs. And I was like,
Oh Jesus.
and note to self, do not let my mother listen to this one.
My virgin ears. Well,
Oh
okay,
my
so
God.
you know that dark humor you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad we're recording because I need to get your reaction live on this thing.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you a picture. And for those that can't see it, I don't think you're ever gonna see it. But I got a buddy of mine. His
Are
name
you
is
are you texting it to me?
I'm trying to find it first. I'll let you know
Oh,
when I'm texting it.
okay.
A buddy of mine, Travis. It's not funny. He got blown up in the war and he lost both his legs. And one Halloween, he actually he decided to dress himself as a soldier that got blown up.
Oh,
And he got so much shit for it. He's like, "What?" He's like, "That really happened to me." You
he's like,
know?
that's my story. I'm not doing it like to someone else.
No. And he even has like a fake little foot on the bottom of the wheelchair and stuff. Um Here, I just sent it to you.
Okay, let me see.
He said he got so much shit for it. He's like, "What?" He's like, "It really happened." Yeah, it should be coming to you.
Oh, there it goes. Hold on, let me see. One of my friends, he's a single amputee,
Mhm.
and he had a real estate business called One Legged Realty.
Nice. Oh,
Oh,
you see it? Like he's got the uniform on and everything, fake blood. Like he
oh,
committed to this.
how many? Okay, how many medics would like retired medics just start twitching like immediately, like,
Yeah. So I was giving you a little heads up before you saw that one.
holy cow.
But if you
Wait,
knew Travis, you would
is that Travis
he's
Mills?
no, it's Travis Strong.
Oh, Travis.
This dude has no legs and weighs 200 almost 200 pounds.
His arms.
Like
Wait, does he have
this
all his
dude's
arms or the? Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. He's got his
he
arms.
does. Okay, it just the picture looked funny.
He had a viral video that went viral. He had a video that went viral of him climbing those stairs in Colorado. It's like those, you know what stairs I'm talking about that everybody climbs. It's like a,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like girl.
but he did it, and I think it took him 5 hours to do it, but he was doing it and he did it. And then he went a few years ago with the Water Boys to do climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and he ended up having to pull out because
Altitude.
no, no, not even that. It's just
Oh.
because he's so low to the ground that the dust was getting in his face and it was getting really
Oh.
bad for him. But he's planning on doing it again. Now he knows what he needs to do to prep. Like I have no doubt this dude can freaking do it. Like Travis is a beast. He's an animal. And the one guy that you think would have severe PTSD, nothing.
You know why though?
Absolutely nothing.
Because he fights back. Because
He
he
well
owns
he
it. Like we're gonna have this conversation with somebody. So this
no.
is interesting, right? So all of us military and then medicine, like, you as a search and rescue and medical and all that stuff, and we see shit, right? We're like,
Hmm.
I don't belong there. Or, I mean, we're seeing all kinds of things, and we have to respond,
Hmm.
not just react. We have to actually
Right.
respond, right? And and we're doing it, right? Like, oh, I saved his ass, like that, like, hell yeah, you know what I mean? In whatever world we're in, right? And it's funny because when people get out, like you said it, like, oh, I miss that adrenaline. And we kind of, we hear it all the time. I lost my purpose, I lost my value, I kind of, I've
You
lost
lose your identity,
identity, like all that
Hmm.
stuff. And the ones that I see that are more successful find that, like, they fight for it. They fight to, so like the person that started the Spartan race,
Yeah.
he's a double amputee, if I'm not mistaken. And they had said to him, he went to whatever obstacle course, and they're like, yeah, dude, like, can't do it, like, you don't have legs. And he's like, fuck you.
Hmm.
And literally Spartan races were born, because of that. He fought back. He's like, I'll
And,
show you.
and you know what's funny? I'm going to plug in the Adaptive Training Foundation. We did a Spartan race 2 years ago now. A bunch of us adaptive athletes, people missing legs and arms and in wheelchairs. We did a 5K Spartan together. One of our girls used arm crutches and her braces and walked it. She had only walked a mile up until that point, and her husband was right behind her to help push her up the hill or do whatever. And we did it. And
That's
it's
the
on the,
point. You did it.
we did it. And, I'm glad you brought up Travis Mills because you know exactly who that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's one of five living quadruple amputees.
Yep.
Quadruple, no
Quadruple.
arms,
Mm-hmm.
no legs.
Yep.
And David Vibora, the founder of the Adaptive Training Foundation, he was actually at a birthday party for Clint Bruce, who's the founder of Carry the Load. And if you ask David, like, he saw Travis walk in, he didn't know him at the time. He just saw him walk in to the party. And if you ask David, he said it was like the hot chick at the bar. Like, he just had to like
Everybody
turn,
wanted to know him.
turn and like make beeline it for him and was like, hey man, when's the last time you worked out? And Travis is like, I don't want to make you feel like an asshole, but I don't have arms or legs. He's like, what are you afraid of, dude? He's like, gravity, falling. And David's like, well, let's go fall and like basically figure this shit out. And it was because of Travis and another Marine with no legs, the foundation started
Yeah.
because he gave David a chance, and David just had that courage to go up to him and not even introduce him, just like, hey man, when's the last time you worked out? It was like, what?
Like,
Who the fuck are you? And David's like, let's go.
let's do it. And here
And
we
10
are with this huge
here we are 10 years
adaptive
later.
sport.
Yeah, Adaptive Training Foundation. And 10 years later, they hit their 10-year now. Huge, blowing up, over almost 300 of us adaptive athletes that have gone through, lives changed, lives saved.
Mm-hmm.
And way more, and as well as I do, people within the adaptive community or with disabilities or ailments, the mortality rate is a lot greater,
Oh yeah.
and
Absolutely.
so we have lost people. We've lost people to cancer. We've lost people to suicide. We've lost people to, you name it. We've lost our own people, our own
Yep.
athletes. And what I love about the foundation is there's like a never forget wall and some wads that we do for like my classmate Bob that died of cancer. There's a Bob wad. Um, David and we just know sweat equity. A little bit of pain in your sweat equity is minuscule compared to what people have done to give the ultimate
It's
sacrifice or whatnot.
therapeutic. Yeah. And it's
It
therapeutic.
is.
Like, you're doing it for a purpose, and it's helping yourself. And you do get kind of the endorphin high,
Mhm.
I mean, I remember somebody saying to me one time, hey, you were like in the gym and like you didn't even say hi. And I'm like, where were you? I was like right behind you. And I was like, oh, but he goes, like, the mirror is right there. And I'm like, I don't look around. Like, I have my music loud. I get in my world and I work out my problems and my
Mhm.
stress, and I hurt myself, so to speak. Like, if I'm
Mhm.
having a crap day, then the weights get a little heavier that day,
Yeah.
you know?
We don't even have mirrors at the gym. We have like those little tiny portable like all mirrors that you get at Walmart or something.
Yeah.
Other than that, there are no mirrors. And
Interesting.
one of our girls, we put her in the anti-gravity treadmill because
Oh yeah, the
she didn't
Gravitron.
walk.
I've been on those.
Yeah, the Alter G, and we don't. She was a combat medic, actually Army. Um, Took shrapnel downrange, had 3 or 4 hip surgeries, and one of the last surgeries, the doctor accidentally clipped her nerve that fired off her glute and her hip flexor, so she couldn't even lift her right leg, and
Oh,
she couldn't contract the right side of her stomach, like
so
her.
all atrophy. Oh God.
So imagine trying to teach her how to walk, but imagine a wet spaghetti noodle.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, stand on this, and it's just like
Just like
flopping all
roll.
over, right?
Yeah.
Well, within 9 weeks, we were able to get her core strong enough. It was so she was in a chair for 2 years, and you know what she forgot in those 2 years? That her left leg actually worked. You know?
And there's a memory there, right? That's what they're doing with paraplegics, quadriplegics. I have a guy that I took care of, and he was being responsible. He went up with a bunch of friends in a taxi cab. They were up at the water having a good time, drinking a, 4th of July party kind of thing. And he jumped, is a classic, jumped in the shallow water, didn't realize it was, and C5 burst fracture.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, same thing.
Yep. And now
You
he
know.
went from, he was a functional quad, right? So he can use his arms somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, it's been years now. And I still keep in touch with his mom and stuff, but he has moments where he's constantly, it's memory. He's like, they have to do it over and over and over and thousands of times. But he's starting to get a little bit back. I mean, he's still in a wheelchair and stuff, but he can stand, he can hold himself a little bit. So, yeah, the brain, it's a pretty impressive thing.
Yeah, and sorry, my best friend just called, and she just told me she got the job. So I'm like, oh shit! So I
Yeah,
have to call her in a
the
minute.
best friend. Shout out.
Yay! But yeah, like our athlete Gabby, that's who I was talking about. We were saying, hey, roll over, do this, do that, and she wasn't. I noticed she was not using her left leg. I'm like, Gabby, your left leg works. Use it. And then she was like,
Oh yeah.
what? And then it's a 9 week course, training program. And then probably in week 7 or something, one of the guys pulled her. She was exercising and he pulled her from the machine, so she fell on the ground. Like it was not a hard fall. It was like super close to the ground, right? So she
Right.
accidentally. It was a funny moment actually. So the same guy took his leg off. An above the knee amputee, right? So he took his leg off so he can do some ab workouts. So his
Yeah.
leg was just sitting there. Well, Gabby was done with her workout, and then she just like saw his leg and was like, I'm gonna get him back, kind of thing. So she stole his leg. She grabbed his leg and like rolled over to the other side of the gym. And I'm recording this, and we're just like waiting for them to wrap up their workouts. And I'll keep this short. You see the wheels spinning in her head, and then you see her, and at this point, she hasn't been able to really stand up and take a step,
Right.
but she's getting close, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
She grabbed his leg to support the leg that's not firing off, and she stood up using his leg as support, and then you see her like kind of taking a step, and the next thing you know, she's taking steps using his leg, she's like hanging on to his
The leg
prosthetic.
crutch.
Yeah, literally. And then I'm like, holy shit. So then I get her like a weighted bar because I'm like, we didn't plan this. Like, what can you do?
Right,
We're
right.
watching like proud parents, like, holy shit, our kid's walking,
There she goes.
And she started taking steps, and then David's like, really? A prosthetic and a weighted bar is all we have? And I'm like, dude, we didn't even fucking plan this.
We don't
Like, look
care.
at this.
She doing it.
So one of the guys went and got her a walker, and she ended up walking half the length of the turf to ring the victory bell.
Damn.
And we did not even plan that shit.
And what it did for her mental health was probably more than 10 therapy
Mhm.
sessions.
Yeah. And then leading up to that, we knew like, oh, okay. So we gradually built up, and then we put her in that anti-gravity treadmill and taped her toe because she has drop foot. So we taped
Oh,
it
right.
where it was up. She was kind of taking her steps, and then one of the girls brought that mirror off to the
You
side
could
so she could
focus.
we're like, Gabby, look. and she just like looked and she saw that her leg that she couldn't stand on was she was walking on it. Her smile, either you couldn't take it off away from her all day.
That's
She's like, I'm
amazing.
walking. I'm
Yeah.
walking. And we're like, yes, you are, and we're crying. And it's those moments,
Yeah.
and David's like, if you treat people broken, they're going to show up broken. But if you treat them as a whole individual, that person shows up.
I'll tell you,
It's
there's a,
beautiful, man.
I don't know how much you know about neurofeedback, and I don't want to get deep into it, but there is a gentleman that does neurofeedback. I've had it done. My son has it had it done, and he said to me, he goes, "I don't put out diagnoses." I'm like, "What do you mean?" So he's like, "When I put there's a cap that goes on when they do a QEEG, so they
Mm-hmm.
evaluate the whole brain, right? And this
Mm-hmm.
cap goes on,
Is that when they
and
inject it with gel and put the little probes on there?
yeah, it's just to monitor the brain. Yeah, they're not doing shock therapy or anything like
No,
that. They're
no, no,
just,
no.
yeah,
I
they
think
put the
I've had
gel
that
in.
actually.
The
Yeah.
what?
I've had that where they put the gel in and they put the things and they just
Yeah.
see the
Yeah.
yeah.
And they see what the brain, so it's basically how the connections are all working.
Mm-hmm.
And what he says is like, I show people the areas of dysregulation. He's like, and some of them add up to things like depression or anxiety or PTSD or whatever. He goes, but I actually don't really say that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, for example, when mine was done, there's a marker in the frontal that is for depression. And I had
Mm-hmm.
this connection. And he's like, have you ever had any problems with depression? I'm like, well, I had postpartum after my son. I said, but I mean, like, everybody has a pity party day, right? Keith Ice Cream watched
Mm-hmm.
the show. I said, but nothing that I can think of. But I said, we have a strong family history. And
Yeah.
he's like, that's my point. He's like, just because the connection's there doesn't mean that the brain doesn't overcome things. So for whatever reason, you have not strengthened that connection you had, but you really could be dealing with
Interesting.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's funny. Now I also found the other side of it. He didn't tell me. It's like I added it up myself, is that I had been dealing with high functioning anxiety for like ever. And I didn't even know it. And because of
Because
all
that's
the
your normal.
yeah, that's how but nobody see it from the outside. It was just
Yeah.
me on the inside, like
Yeah.
all this, I always said, I was like, oh, Catholic girl guilt, and it was really high functioning anxiety. Yeah, it's crazy. So,
Catholic girl guilt.
wait, I'm going to turn
Wow.
it for a minute and ask this. I
Yeah.
kind of said how my podcast got started. How did yours get started? Like, we're going to switch subjects for a minute.
It was a happy accident.
Mine was too, but like, what's your why
I
behind that?
went to school for audio engineering
Very
uh,
cool.
after after I couldn't be in the service anymore and was very like thinking about suicide and getting help and all this shit. My transition sucked, and it's kind of the same story you hear from a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I went to school for audio engineering. I'm like, I've got one shot. Let me take it. And I go, and I had this amazing, amazing music business instructor who's actually a good friend of mine now. But at the time, she was student teacher relationship, of course, and we had to take a couple of semesters of music business, and part of that was finding our brand.
Oh,
And I'm like, oh, okay. And I had to like spit out a name when she was like, what's yours? And because I didn't really think of it. I'm like, 2200 Tapped. Because I had already toyed with that a few years ago because I just loved the concept behind it. And it was important to me. Well, being a musician, it was because somebody chose to share their story through music with the lyrics that helped me take suicide off the table in 2014.
nice.
And I'm like, all right, and I was like, I want to put music to people's stories. Everybody's got a story. It's job security. Like, this is easy. Like, putting music to stuff is easy for me.
Right. You're natural.
And yeah, and before that could really take off, I was a guest on a buddy of mine's podcast, and I was watching how he engineered it. I'm like, it can't be that easy to do this. And he's like, actually, it really is easy to do this. And I say easy for us because we were going to school for this.
Right.
We
You
were going to,
understood it.
we understood, like signal flow and gain and this and meters. And like, we understood that. And I'm like, this is easy. So I was like, I'll start a podcast like everybody else. And this was pre-COVID. So I feel like we're the OGs.
Yeah.
And I already for years, I would always talk to friends and they're like, how the hell do you do that? I'm like, do what? How do you just get it out of us? I'm like, I don't know.
You
I
do it.
listen.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like, I think I'm gonna give people a safe place to share their stories, but how they've been able to overcome it because somebody needs to hear it. And and Dave Grohl, the lead singer of the Foo Fighters, he has this quote. It says, "You, the best, the I'm gonna paraphrase, but like the best thing about music is you could sing one song to 85,000 people, and they'll all sing it back to you for 85,000 different reasons."
Yep.
And that just like blew my mind. So that got started. I actually, my first episode, it was three different friends of mine. I'm like, hey, I was like, let's just do a round table kind of thing. And my buddy Sean Peterson like set the tone pretty quickly, very quickly. And they kind of created the flow of how this was about to go down. And it
Wow.
was him and Megan and Jenna, and it was just really cool. Um, and I had a lot of friends that I met through an organization that they were on the other side of a lot of their shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just ask them, they're like, yeah, come on, totally.
Let's do
And
it.
yeah, and we spoke the same language. And what I found out is I'm not going to invite people on that I feel that are still in their shit, because then it's not fair to them. It's really not. If they're in a state of trauma, it's not fair to have them relive it. Then it becomes a he said, she said,
She,
God dang it, she said, pointing fingers like Jerry Springer episode.
yeah,
So I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. We need people that have been there, done that, because our listeners are people that want to know, how did you do it? Because at the end of the day, people are like, I don't have tools, I don't know how to do this. You think about it. How do you do it? How do you get help?
right.
Well, this is how so and so did it. This is how so and so did it. And it's a whole group of different people from different backgrounds, which is even cooler. And there's a lot of veterans, there's a lot of civilians. I don't do a lot of children because there's a lot of legal stuff behind that.
Yeah.
Uh, but I had Holden and I got his mom's permission and we're good to go.
I liked
And
how you did it too. It was very well curated in the sense of like you had him, you asked specific questions, and then he left the room so they could have
mhm,
free talk. It was smart.
yeah, yeah, and I will be honest, like his parents gave me a list of questions that they make sure they only ask those for him or
Yes,
to him.
as it should be.
And yeah, because he's a little guy.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's fine, dude. So I literally I was reading the questions, but I was still like, how do I make this personable without sounding robotic?
Right.
Um,
You did a good
that's
job.
no, thank you. And he did
Mm.
too. I mean, that's a one-off.
Hmm.
And we just I was recording a lot and then I was showing up sideways. I'm like, this ain't affecting me. Bullshit. This
Yep.
shit was affecting me. That's why I
Hmm.
do one episode a month. It's just a lot sometimes. Um,
God
excuse me.
bless you.
Thank you. And I've been fortunate. All of my guests have been complete rock stars. Every single one of
Hmm.
them. I don't have a favorite episode. There's not one that outshines the other. They're all
Hmm.
equally very, very good. Um, that's pretty much how we got started back in 2019. And we had to pump the brakes a lot, but here we are. And it's pretty cool.
That's the beauty of it, though. I mean, even if you like take a breather, it's still there. It's not
Yeah,
like it's okay to take a break and kind of regroup and all that. But I will
yeah.
say, so how did Cindy find you?
It's a funny
How'd you
story.
see?
It's
They're
a
all
funny
funny
story.
stories, Cindy.
I was well, Cindy didn't find me. It was Susie. Um,
Because MVP.
yeah, because MVP, I had gone to MVP because the Dallas chapter works out at the Adaptive Training Foundation.
Right.
And I showed up, for a few sessions, and the takeaway at the very end, they're like, if you need somebody to talk to, here's Susie's number. Here's Susie's number. Here's Susie. I'm like, who is Susie? And then I started saying she had a podcast, but I didn't put two and two together.
Right.
I was just like, who is this Susie? And I called her for a session. I actually called her to connect with her. This is how Susie works. I called to connect with her, right? that was it. Like, hey, Susie, my name is Pam. I'm this, that. Can we schedule a session? That was my mindset going into this phone call. Like, I'm just calling to schedule a session with her down
Right.
the road. No, I called, and within 5 minutes, she had me bawling my ass off. Like
It,
maybe 10, because she started asking me the questions about my childhood and this and that, and the whole time I'm like, I was just calling to schedule a freaking sit down, and holy fuck, I'm like bawling. And through that conversation, she's like, well, what do you want? And we're talking, and I'm like, well, I've got this podcast. This is what I do. I'm trying to get connected with other people. I want to launch it further. These are my goals. She said, have you ever heard of Coming Home Well? I'm like, I have not heard of Coming Home Well. She said, well, that's who hosts my platform. That's who hosts my podcast. And let me get you connected with Cindy. And as we were on the phone, she texted Cindy. And next thing I know, we're on a three-way text while I'm still on the phone with Susie getting my ass handed to me,
oh,
right?
yeah, she doesn't wait. She's not polite.
No. No. And then Susie's like East Coast, or not Susie. Well, Susie's West Coast time. I'm Central, and then Cindy's East. So
Right.
we're all trying to this. It was kind of goofy how that was working out, but it was working out. Got off the phone, and then I think I was on the phone with Cindy for like an hour right shortly after about the mission, what we do. And she's like, send me your stuff. Let me hear it. Let me see if it'd be a good fit. Blah 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 blah. And the rest is literally history.
And
And it's kind of funny,
it
and
is funny. And
it's
it's
super
funny
funny.
how the world and how big it is also how small it is, right? And so, and
Yeah.
when Pam says Susie, word Susie Landolfi, and this is who I aspire to be when I am her age. And
And look just like her
and
too. She
look
looks
like
so good.
yes, she's amazing and she's energetic. And I don't even know if I have as much energy as she does. Um, and just wise, I don't know if you ever heard the story of, and Susie, if you're listening to this and I get it wrong, you can like tell us that we screwed it up. But
Oh, she will.
I remember, yeah, she will. I remember listening to one of her podcasts and she was telling how she got involved with veterans because she's not a veteran. And she's the horse ranch, right? And she's up there, and I'm just going to summarize it short. The long and short of it is like, she goes, there's this van that drives in, and I'm like, oh my God, that's like a van that steals children. Like it was white with no windows,
Just
and
candy
she's
on the
on
side.
guard. She's like, and this guy comes out and is talking to her and says, if we brought veterans up here, would you be like, they could work with the horses, like that kind of thing. And she's like, yeah, yeah, I could do that. And like, there are other people up there. And so they have that conversation and he leaves and they're like, the staff's like, do you know who that is? And she's like, well, I'm hoping it's not a pedophile. It was Rick Allen. It was
Oh
from,
my gosh.
and so for the audience that are younger
That's
and don't know,
funny.
that is the drummer for Def Leppard.
That's amazing.
I was like,
That's how she got connected? Like, how did I
yeah,
not know this? This is amazing.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
get the lead out, Susie. Way to get the
So
lead out, sister.
I giggled. I was like, oh my God. And then she also started, did you know that she also started the first condom store? Ask her about that.
I
And
heard about that, and I
she
think
got sued
Cindy.
by, it went to the Supreme Court. She got sued by like, and I'm probably getting this wrong somewhere, but she got sued by like a congressman or somebody. And it went to the Supreme Court and she won. But ask her about, she started the first condom store.
I need to
Like,
interview Susie. I'm like, tell me about this condom store story
she's gonna
within
be like,
your.
what? Like, Donna, why are you? I'm like, I listen to your podcast. I was like, I learned stuff about you.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it was so funny.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah,
Oh,
she's amazing.
Susie.
So
Susie's like
so
all of 5 foot nothing too. It's so great. But
we're
she's
talking.
like that. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying. So for the audience, like this, everyone's like Susie, Susie, Susie. Susie Landolfi is her name, and she has a podcast called "Be Crazy Well,"
Be
which is a
crazy.
great
Well.
name. Yeah,
Yeah.
and she's fiery, and she boxes 3 times a week. And was it George Foreman's son? That's her training.
I don't know,
Uh,
but I know she's connected to Paul, Jacob Paul. So I'm curious to
Yeah.
see this fight with Tyson and Jacob go down, and
Oh
her
Lord.
on the sideline, I'm
She
sure.
probably trains the same but where she trains at. So yeah. She we could talk about stories. You could sit around a campfire and just have Susie stories like all day. And it's so funny because like I don't even like I'm in Texas. Like it's not anybody that I sit next to and talk to, but listening to her podcast, I'm like,
Hmm.
oh Lord, I want to be you. Like that's what I
Susie's
aspire.
very like, there's no filter with Susie, which is what I love.
Yeah.
And when she's like, "That's your fucking child," and fucking like it was an f bomb, f bomb. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I need somebody like you. I
Well,
so need someone. Don't sugarcoat this
she's
shit.
the therapist that military get drawn to because
Yeah,
it's real, right? It's
yeah,
not somebody sitting there with the pen and paper and the,
yeah.
taking note. Tell me how you feel about that. Listen, fucker.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I mean, and she loves hard, and that may sound crude to a lot of people, but for us,
tough
that's our
love.
love language.
It is our love language.
If
Yeah,
somebody
when we
calls
come
you
up,
fucker, it's because they love you.
right. You're like, are you done being an ass? And
Yeah.
it's true. And actually, we have a veteran treatment court here, and I've been to it a couple of times. Like I've watched it in action,
Mm.
and the first comment I made, I said, and I love the judge that runs it. He's a great guy, and I'm like, tell he's not a veteran. I'm like, he's nicer than I would be. I'd be like, don't play me,
Mm.
and I mean, he's trying to help him. He's doing wonderful things, but
Mm.
the approach, I would turn just a little bit and be
Oh
like,
my God.
okay, you bring me that in 3 days. You understand? Like it would be one of those things, tough love, right?
Yeah. No, I think we know, even police officers and it's like first responders, like we all have the same language.
Yeah.
And and there's some civilians that get it, and
First
there's some that just
responders,
don't.
all those guys get it.
Yeah. I showed some friends of mine that picture of Travis, and they're like, "Oh God, that's a lot." And I'm like, "You're not even laughing. Like,
Were
why
they
aren't you even
civilian or
laughing?"
were they
They're civilian.
medical or were they?
One was a doctor, believe it or not. But she was like, kind of like, hmm. But she kind of giggled, but the other ones are like, hmm. Like they didn't know how to process it. And I'm like, that's totally cool. There's no judgment on you. It's just like you can see the dynamic is so different.
And
The
we're
dark
like, oh
humor.
damn.
I mean, he had a fake foot taped to his freaking wheelchair. um, it's just I don't know. That's how we deflect because we don't want to feel a lot of shit. And
Well, what's
it
the
just it is
statement
what it is, right?
when somebody starts in the military or the medical world and they kind of, what's the word? Maybe they're in our sense being whiny. What's the comment that comes back? Well, did you die? Nah, you're fine. Move on.
Keep
And
going.
what we're really saying is take that shit and that emotion, stick it in a box and stick it, and it's not healthy, right? Stick it in a
Mm.
box, put it away, move on. We've got other things to do, right?
Yeah,
We
you
don't,
become a liability if your feelings get involved.
yeah,
It's so
you do.
you
You do.
do.
And look what I mean, what you did. Although I was thinking of you last week, Pam. I was thinking
Well,
of you
last week.
because you're Coast Guard and you're search and rescue, and I was on a cruise ship. and
Oh, back to this story. Yeah,
I
what
was
happened? Tell me.
giggling. Well, I was actually saying to my buddy, as I said to her, I'm like, well, actually, it was MZ. She was with me, and she goes, "What if somebody like dies or gets hurt?" And I'm like, "They got chillers here; they can put them in." I said, "But if it's like emergency medicine, like they need to do something, I'm like, they have Coast Guard come in." And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "They'll come." He's like, "You're kidding." I'm like, "Ah." They'll
They'll
either
fly in.
basket them. Do you guys land on the cruise ship or do you just do the basket or sense like what do you guys do?
Usually not. As far as I know, they just do a basket hoist.
Basket
They'll
hoist.
send the rescue swimmer down to pack them up or whatever, and then they get them out. I mean, I don't know if they land. I think it's safer to be in the air, honestly, because you've got waves and stuff on the boat doing all this shit. I don't know. That'd be a question I have to ask my Airedale buddies because I was
So
on the boat side.
you were in a boat, right?
I was on the small boats.
Small boat. Okay.
But usually when there's a medevac, you by the time you land and do this, you got to secure the deck. You don't want to really land with all the shit on there anyways, because the FOD and if something goes in the
Oh yeah.
rotors, like so, it's just safer to be up there and just drop the swimmer. And I think
Yeah, the
makes
bath.
sense to me.
I've been in that basket
Um,
once. That's
yeah,
like that's like a free hangover. Like it's
Yeah.
you feel really like we actually I'm laughing because so we got back on Sunday and MZ says to me, dude, are you still feeling like you're on the ship? And we're 2 days out and I'm sitting here talking to
Oh,
you and I'm
yeah.
still feeling that. Did you
Hmm.
guys have that all the time? Like you feel like your
Hmm.
body's moving forward?
Hmm. Well, what happened was like on the small boats, they would teach us, when you're on a boat and you get back on land, you still feel like you're on the boat. But when it came to law enforcement, anyways, that's how they would teach us. They said if you're going to do a field sobriety test on somebody that just got off a boat, you need to wait at least 15 minutes because their body is still in motion.
15. I'm on day 2
Yeah,
and
well,
I'm
you're on a
like,
cruise ship. That's different. It's
how long
completely
does that
different.
take?
A few days, probably 4 or 5 days.
Really? Because I literally I'm
Hmm.
talking to you and I'm like, oh, like I kind of like my
Hmm.
body is like feels like it's moving forward. And I'm like, when does
Well,
this stop?
yeah, when I met my best friend on that Jillian Michaels cruise, we both got off the ship and probably for like a good 3 or 4 days, we're like, "Do you still feel that? I still feel like I'm moving." I'm like, "Whoa!"
How'd you
And
how'd you know about Jillian Michaels cruise? Like I didn't even know that was a thing. What?
I was a Biggest Loser fan back in the early 2000s, like
Yeah.
huge. Loved Jillian Michaels. I even had a crush on her. I'm like, dude, she's hot. She's like,
My
she's got this
girl.
militaristic, just like in
Yeah.
your face, which I don't really care for now. But back then, I was like, yeah, let's go. And
Let's go.
I got some of her books. I did a lot of her workouts. I loved the high intensity stuff. I loved her books were just fascinating because it taught you about your body and your hormones or this, that, and the other. And then she came out, she's like, hey, we're gonna have a cruise. And I actually was not gonna go on the cruise. Um, and I got stationed in Sabine Pass in 2010, and I get a phone call, and it was like this guy from the cruise line. They're like, hey, because I had signed up to be notified about the cruise.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, do you still want to go? I'm like, I don't know. I just got to a new duty station, and I'm already gonna ask for leave. Like, I don't think they're even gonna approve it. Uh, he said, well, like, here's the deadline to put down a deposit if you want to go. You got to do it. So I was like, fuck it, I'll put the deposit down. I actually asked my chief if I can go on leave for the cruise, and they got approved pretty quickly.
Damn.
I was like, holy shit, I just got here and I got approved. Let's go. So then I flew to Miami. And how I met my best friend is even funnier because Jillian, like, we got like this envelope before we went on the cruise, and in the envelope had like the itinerary, this welcome letter, and like a bandana, a certain color bandana. Mine was a blue bandana. Come to find out, she had different colors for different teams, or
Oh,
for something that towards the end of the cruise that it was going to count towards, right? And I was at a hotel in Miami. The shuttle was coming to get me. I almost missed the shuttle. So I run in, I get my bags, I put it in the shuttle, and I'm sitting there to go to the port. And all I hear are these two women behind me, blue team, blue. Like they were on the blue team. I'm like, who the fuck is this? And I turn around and it was my now best friend and her friends. I was like, what? And I had a Red Sox shirt on. She's like, you like the Red Sox? I'm like, I love the Red Sox. So that's how we really started to get to talking to each other. And we spent a week on the cruise line, went to out of Miami to the Bahamas, stopped at Great Stirrup Cay, Private Island, was sitting next to
I was
Jillian, listening
there.
to music.
You were
Were you
sitting next
really?
to, yeah, we stopped at the same spot. Did you sat you sat next to Jillian?
Yeah, went took the small boat back to the cruise ship, everything like really it was really rad. After the cruise, she said, I'm never doing it again because all the food and stuff, the logistics behind it was insane. The food
Oh,
was, it had to be good food. It had to be X, Y, and Z because the whole cruise was based around health and fitness.
right, right.
And after that, it was a one and done.
She's like, nope, not again.
Yeah, but that was in 2010. And that's when I met my now best friend. And we've had our rough patches, of course, but now we've been super tight since. And 14 years later, and here we are. And
You still get Christmas cards from Jillian?
oh, hell no. No. No, I don't. But yeah. But real quick, I know we were talking on the text, like what we're doing now is completely different
Mm-hmm.
to, what we did in the service. And I want to touch on that before we jump off, if that's cool.
Yes, that's where we were supposed to be going. We went circuitous
We
to
went,
that one.
hey, I'm okay with where this has gone. I feel like you've been asking me all the questions, so I feel like I need to turn the table real quick. But so you did 21 years, which God bless you. I mean, just trying to make it to 20 years is
Ugh.
a rite of passage.
Mm,
Whether you get injured or something happens or whatever, but you made it.
yeah.
And how, what, you know, what you're doing now, what got you to this point as opposed to what you used to do in the service? I mean, since it's different. I mean, how did
So,
that work out?
so when I got done, like I said in the beginning, I was like, oh, another fucking boss. Like I literally
Mm,
left a toxic office. It was a struggle.
yeah.
Um, and I was doing work that the mission was awesome. And I was, it was a lot of advocating for the service members, getting them the medical care they needed. And at a high level, like I get to work with all these different units. And so I loved it. I loved that part. But then I got to see the business side, the ugly
Hmm.
side,
Yeah.
where these pockets of people are just trying to take away, like they personally think that they are the stewards of the dollar, and they are taking away, and I'm like, that, no, and they're interpreting policy in a way that's more restrictive, and I saw that, and I'll tell you, you want to talk about mind fuck. I mean, it was hard, and it part. Sometimes you think, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just over the top. Maybe I'm too idealistic. But then when you get a phone call from somebody that works within the Secretary of the Air Force, like I kid you not, and says, "Hey, I heard you in that meeting, and like I want to learn more about you because you seem to kind of know what you're talking about." I was like, "Oh, I mean, I've been in this job for like at the time it was like 6 years." And so, and it was a physician. And
Mm,
he called me and was like, I want to understand this program better. I want to understand you better. I want you to teach me. Very unusual. I mean, that doesn't, Pam, like the hierarchy doesn't go down for
yeah.
advice, right? And so
Right.
I thought that's interesting. So, anyways, over the course of 2 years, I literally taught this person like what that policy said, how it was getting implemented, and how they were abusing it essentially. And he called me one day and he said, you said that there were people that were trying to take the policy and work it against and take stuff away from people. And when you said that, I thought it was like the onesie twosies. And he's like, but we're the onesie twosies. I'm like, uh-huh, I'm telling you. So after 8 years of that, and I crawled to the finish line. Like my buddy said to me, hey, like when you get within a year, it's going to be awesome. It's just going to fly. And so I was like, I think I was like 10, maybe I was like 8 months out. And he's like, so how's it going? Like, how does it feel? I'm like, how's it feel? I said, imagine an obstacle course where you're low crawling across dirt and there's these swinging machetes and you're trying not to have them cut your legs and head off. And he's like, I've never had anybody describe a last year like that.
Yeah. So much for short timer's disease. This shit sucks.
Oh, I was so burnt. So when I got out, I was like, I had nothing. I
Yeah.
had nothing in me. And then I was like, I need to figure it out. And I knew I didn't want to go back to nursing because I had been a civilian nurse like one time for like 2 years. And I struggled because in the military, we're kind of all working together because there's no money. I mean,
Mm,
there's money, but it's not the same. The doctors don't bring the patients. We have our built in patients, right? That
right.
is what it is. So we are all working together. And in the civilian community is not like that.
Nope.
And holy cow,
I
I
hate that.
definitely got into some situations and I was like, fuck this. And I used to call it going to get my crack money. I'll go to work, get my crack money. I hated it. I didn't like it. And
Yeah.
it's worse now. I mean, it really is worse. And I'm like, I can't do that. I will not fare well. And the person that I
Mm,
engage with will also not fare well. So why do that? So I was like, I'm just going to hang up that little nursing hat. We're good there. And what do I want to do? And so it's been a 3 years of evolving, but I think what I'm doing now is doing what I couldn't do in the military, and that's like truly advocating for veterans and
That's
through
awesome.
lots of different means, right? Through the podcasts that we do. And I work a lot with, coming home well. My own business, I do veteran breakfast, I do advocacy work, I try to teach businesses how to engage with veterans
Mm,
from things that you can use, like real stuff, like not some high end educational bullshit. Like, how do you really get so your veteran like says, damn, they got my back kind of thing. So, and I
mm,
coach veterans that kind of want to level up, like they're like ready, they're healed.
mm.
And I was giggling because you said, I don't, I don't engage like unhealed people. And I went, oh my Lord, do I get you? And when we say this, and I'm going to put that at the audience, if you're unhealed or you're struggling, it is not a dig on anybody. We've all been there, right? Pam, you've been there. I've been there. We've all been in this space.
Yeah.
What we're saying is that for things like podcasts and interviewing and whatnot, they can't reflect because they're in the middle of it. And I ran into that situation. I didn't realize that person was kind of in that space,
Mm.
and we couldn't release it. We're
No, I
like,
mean, it's not fair to that person.
that's what we said. I'm like, this isn't fair. It's
It's
not.
not fair.
Uh-uh.
They're not ready, and that's why the vetting process has to be very thorough.
Yes.
Uh, for that reason, because then it
Right.
turns into a Jerry Springer show. You might, and don't get me wrong, my guests that have come on, they're ready to share, but sometimes it almost re-traumatizes them, and I've had them kind of go in that space, and if you don't know how to pull them out of it,
Thank you. If
that's
you
not
can't read
good.
them, to move them away. I actually had this happen. We did, it was with two researchers,
Mm,
and they're both veterans. One actually retired from the Navy, he was Marine in the Navy, and then the other one was Vietnam. And he only did a short time, like
mm,
4, 6 years, whatever it was. Um, and I was asking them some questions about leaving, and we were talking about Vietnam and like what that looked like. And he had to stop for a minute, and he
mm,
himself is a psychologist, so he was able to close himself down as he needed to. But I was watching him very closely when we were doing that, and I
yeah.
stopped for a minute and I let him have his moment. And he's like, ooh, he goes, caught me there. He's like, I hadn't had that emotion in quite a while.
Yeah.
He's like, I hadn't even really thought about it. And when we got done, they were like, okay, were we taking notes? How'd you do that? And I'm like, do what? And they're like, how you made all that work and like bring it around to, whatever. And I was like, I follow you guys, I just kind of move
Mm,
along through it. But
yeah.
I said I did stop because I saw that he's like, that caught me. He goes, it was a great question, it was a great thing. He's like, but it caught me. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, my outpatient treatment in next week, actually, I go over there. I got an email from one of the doctors or the physicians or whatever. She's like, hey, the trauma that you shared with us, would you be open to doing some work around it using VR?
Oh
I was like, oh,
wow,
hell no,
that's
I don't
like
want to do
that's
that.
like digital post exposure, man.
It's like
Woo.
exposure therapy. I'm like, do I
Yeah,
really want to do that? Like,
that
ugh, it just, the thought makes me sick to my stomach. But it's new.
yeah,
I'm like, if you can pull my ass out of it, because I'm gonna tell you right now, I will probably break that thing if something
yeah.
something happens.
You're not gonna charge me for this, right?
I don't
Yeah,
even care. Like, no,
yeah.
like it's just like, yeah, it's we still have all of our shit. We all have it, and we're never really gonna be fully healed, but we're gonna be mended, and it's
That's a good
maintenance.
point. Yeah.
It's just maintenance, man. How do you?
I say all the time, like
Yeah.
you never, ever, ever are responsible for the trauma that happened to you. You as in general, but you're not. But we are responsible for healing, right? We owe that
Our
to
own.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, our own trauma. And we owe it to ourselves, period. But it's very helpful to the family and everybody else. They're appreciative of that, but we owe it to ourselves to do that. And it's hard. And I am a fan. I've helped a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of people that have dealt with PTS and various depression, anxiety, all that stuff. And lots of veterans. And the one thing that I notice with them is talk therapy does not always work out of the get-go
Mhm.
because we're inflamed, right? Like we're inflamed, we're triggered, we're sensitive, we're hypervigilant, we're all those things. And I firmly believe that there is a place for talk therapy, but it's not always where people think it is, and everybody's different. And I think there is a huge place for getting that inflammation down through different modalities like neurofeedback, EMDR, equine therapy,
Yeah.
and multiple modalities, right? And getting that to a point where then you can talk about it, because really the bottom line is you're trying to get your sympathetic parasympathetic
Mhm.
to shut down or work not in a high anxiety state.
Mhm.
You're trying to get that to work in a normal state. So you can talk about those things. So your brain is not afraid to unlock them and let you process it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, a lot of people that I surround myself with, especially at ATF, we're really big in the holistic healing.
Mm-hmm.
Holistic. Like I know people that have done ayahuasca. I know people that have they do mushrooms.
Yep.
Not to the psychedelic like high effect. Like I have some on my counter right now that I'm gonna try.
No, like low dose stuff. I did
Low
Rishi, like
dose.
I do. I mean, this isn't psychedelic, but like on my counter, I just took it this morning in my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And it's Rishi, right? And it's to
hmm
help decrease inflammation and all that
hmm
stuff. Like, yeah,
Yeah. Well, a friend of mine last night told me, she said with the mushrooms, which I thought was interesting, and I'll get off the soapbox because I've never done it. And she said, if you do it with somebody that's with you, that's
yeah,
not on it. Because she said, if you have an episode where you're in a dark space, you could spiral really fast. So you need somebody that can pull you out of it.
yeah, and tell you
And
where it grounds you. Yep.
yeah, and I sleep with my gun next to me, and I'm like, so would you need to take my gun from me? And she said, I would.
Yeah, I
I was
would
like,
too. But if
oh,
you're there and you're with somebody safe and they're like, hey, like the gun's over here, but I'm here,
yes.
then that's a safety zone right there.
Yeah, and I thought that was fascinating because somebody who's willing to do that for anybody, not just me, but if you can find somebody willing to do that, talk through anything that's a threat or could be a threat to you and understand like, hey, I'm going to be here with you so you can experience this and we'll see what happens
Yeah.
in a safe space. I thought that was really cool and I God bless her for that. I think it's
Being
really cool.
irresponsible.
I like my edibles. I haven't been able to take them for a while because I need to be clean for this outpatient thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I like to take it for pain. I don't like, I just,
Yeah.
for my, because I have pain all day, every day.
How
And if
much
I
do
can
you
just take a
take?
little bit,
Like a quarter? My
I
brother
take
takes like a
10
quarter.
milligrams. I only take
Oh,
10. It's not much, but it's enough for me.
yeah.
Um, I know, I know a buddy of mine that accidentally took over 150. And he was like, it was the craziest trip ever. Because you got to think, sometimes the gummy could be 500 milligrams total. So just take a piece off of it. Like you don't want
Right.
to eat the whole thing, or your world's gonna be fucked up. Well, same buddy gave me a gummy one night. He's like, oh, it should be only like 30 milligrams. I ain't gonna shit you. I don't know what the hell happened, but I was like in the mood to start making babies. I was like, what the fuck is happening to me?
What
I was
strain is
like,
that?
what is this? And I was so cold because we were already going to bed, all of us.
Yeah.
We're in a cabin, like nothing happened. It was very innocent, but I felt
Yeah.
like the urge to like, oh my God, I feel like I want to make a baby. And then I got super fucking cold. I went to the bathroom. I got all the towels in the bathroom and just put them over me. So I woke up with all these towels on me. He's like, what happened to you last night? I'm like, your fucking gummy happened to me. What did you give me?
And what's
And
in it?
he started laughing. He's like, I think it was 30 milligrams. I'm like,
I think, Lord.
I hate you. And I went to a friend's house because she made like homemade pho. And I invited a friend of
Mm.
mine and we're there. And a friend, like, he's like, hey, I brought some candy, right? He puts on the counter. I'm like, what kind of candy is it? He's like, it's just regular candy. I'm like, you
You
don't know
sure?
with this group of people, man. What kind of candy? Uh, But no, we like our natural stuff. I know David did ayahuasca once, and he's like, I was throwing up from my toenails, but like he was able to purge a lot of trauma,
That's what I've heard. I've heard
and
it's
he
a pretty
it's pretty
intense.
gnarly. But he came out on the other side of it, just a different guy, and we're really big on like just the natural holistic stuff, none of the medication. Like fuck medication, man. Like if you need it, take it. Yes, I
It
understand.
should be a temporary state versus like you take it to get to a point where you start working yourself back. I mean,
Right.
that really is where it should be instead of here's more and more and more and more,
Hmm.
and it's like it doesn't,
Yeah, and the VA
you
loves
have
to
to
pump us
deal with
with
your,
it.
what'd you say?
And the VA loves to pump us
They
with that
do.
shit.
And you have to deal with your shit. And when you deal with your shit, and it's not easy and it's hard and it sucks and it's all that stuff, but that's what's going to get, the results. So, well, let me ask this quick because we're going to wrap this up. On yours, when you left the military, were you just like, did you have any struggles transitioning from that
Oh
high
yeah.
adrenaline to
Yeah, well, I lived with my best friend actually at the time with her husband and their family, and my transition sucked. It wasn't on my terms, number one.
that's right there, not
You
on your
know,
terms?
it wasn't on my terms. I got really drunk one night, took 5 shots of Crown Royal. I took a knife to my uniform and
Oh,
I cut out my name tapes and it broke and went into my ankle and my they kicked me out of the house. This happened all in front of her. And I
mm,
checked myself into hospital and I was drunk and the social worker's like, "What do you do for a living?" And I told her and she's like, "I would be really careful what you tell me in the next 5 minutes." That's what she told me. So I didn't tell her I was thinking about like ending it and I was depressed. I didn't tell her shit because in Illinois, especially, and I don't know if it's nationwide, I'm sure it is, but if you are in law enforcement or you carry weapons as a profession and you tell somebody you're suicidal or you have this, they could take your gun away from you for up to 5 years.
yeah,
So I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good.
we're all good.
I
Just a
was not
moment.
good. Was not good. And in 2013, it came to a head where I was really contemplating taking myself out. And
Mm.
before I could plan it, I ended up getting a really cool message about a training here in Dallas that would help me, and I decided to come down to get help, mostly because it'd been 2 years since I had a Whataburger and been in Texas, and
You needed a Whataburger.
I didn't get that Whataburger. And it really, after that one weekend of training, it really shifted my perspective into some stuff. And the trauma I experienced in the Coast Guard, the one SAR case that like fucked me up, was on August 10th, 2012. And when I graduated that training on August 10th, 2014, like two
Mm.
years to the day. And that's when I took suicide off the table and I could literally see life in color again. And to the point where I went to my parents' house and I'm like, man, mom, y'all painted the walls. Like, this is a really pretty, it was like a maroon color. I'm like, it's a really pretty color, you know? She's like, Pam, the walls have always been this color.
Wow.
She's like, maybe it's not the walls that changed. I was like, holy shit. You know, like it was a real thing. I could literally see life in color. And then, you know, the in between, but all that stuff, I was homeless for a little bit. I lost my relationship with my best friend. There was so much shit that happened, and it's all in my story in some of the episodes.
Yeah.
Um, and then I moved back to Texas and got started kind of finding my feet, getting my feet back under me, and here I am now. I was able to buy a house this past summer, and
Congrats.
thank you. It's a brand new build too, which I was excited for, and still,
Even
but
better.
it's just like it's home. It's something,
Yours.
and a friend of mine who was a barista at Starbucks in Illinois, I'd go there when I was homeless. She's like, what are you doing here every day, all day? Told her what happened. She's like, I'm going to talk to my husband, see if we can't take you in. And they did. They got me out of my car into their house for a few months until I was able to get back to Texas. And I made a promise to myself that if I had a home, I'm going to open it up to anybody that needs it. And and here we are. So
And here you are.
it's
That's
not been
awesome.
easy. It's not been easy. Trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up has been the hardest thing, and now I feel like I'm there.
You're
And
definitely coming into your own. And you're kind
yeah,
of famous, right? Because
no, I'm
yeah,
not.
no, you are. Because this is funny. We're at a because we have a mutual, we know somebody
Hmm.
mutually, Justin. And I he true story. He called coming home. Well, Cindy sends emails him, and Cindy goes, "Hey, I think he's in your neck of the woods." So she shoots me the email. I'm like, "Okay." So I reach out to him, and then he's like, "Can we meet?" And I said, "Sure." And we meet and we talk. And so I've been kind of helping him, help him with his nonprofit, and similar to it's adaptive fitness, right? All this
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
And so we're at a like a resource fair, right? And I went up to it. I got invited, so I go up to it and check it out. And I'm just standing there talking, and then Justin looks at me and he goes, Do you know a Pam from Dallas?" Like literally says, "Do you know a Pam from Dallas?" I said, "Well, I do know a Pam for Dallas." I said, "Pam Berrigan." I said, "She does a podcast." "You do know everybody." So it's like, what are the odds that I would know the Pam from see, so you're
The Pam
famous
from
now.
Dallas.
That's
That's
why
what
I
I'm gonna
sent
be
you the
known as.
picture. I was like, wait, let's take a picture. I'm like, hey, check this
Yeah.
out.
I know I got that text. I'm like, holy shit, what are they doing together?
But
It
it
was,
was
it was
random.
funny.
And he's starting his first May 1st. We're starting the first they found a home. They found a CrossFit that was
That's
like,
awesome.
and it was super cute because he was like, we went in for the meeting and he starts talking, and like 30 seconds later, they're like, "We're in." And then he keeps talking and talking, and I'm looking at him like, they're they're in,
They're
and he's like,
in.
"Right," and he's talking and talking, and they look at me, and I'm like, "You can
You're
stop
passionate.
talking now," right? It was
Yeah.
so cute. He's like, he goes, "I couldn't really believe it." I'm like,
Yeah,
"There you go."
it's
So yeah,
there.
May 1st
That's
they start.
awesome.
Very
That's so
exciting.
cool, man. I'm so excited to hear that.
Yep.
I've been
So
trying to get him up here or y'all up here to see ATF and
yeah, it
what
just
they do up
hasn't
here, you know.
that we want to come look. It's just like time. You're like, come up for like 3 weeks. I'm like, you come take care of my kids, and we'll talk about that.
Just come up for a few days, really. Like it's
We
all, or
do
just
need to.
come up for one day. All you gotta
Yeah.
do is see it for 5 minutes, and you're gonna be like, holy moly, you know, because David, what they've cultivated over there and built over there, it's been special. And Clint
Yeah.
Bruce with Carry the Load actually gave David space at no cost to start the gym.
Incredible.
He just said, "Hey, train some of my guys, and I'll give you space," and he did, and that's how it started. And now they're looking at launching a really big facility.
I heard.
It's closer to our way, and the official announcement should be at the end of this month. So
Sick.
so I'm excited. So yeah, he needs to come up and see what it's all about. And the resources alone from that gym have helped me meet really a lot of people. And
Yeah.
that's why I know so many. It's so weird, dude. My Rolodex, it's really cool. I think I'm going to start a consultation business because it's like I know so many freaking people,
Let's
and
go do
people are
it.
always calling me.
We'll go consult and tell like these businesses how to engage. That's my biggest thing is how to get veterans to understand not all businesses are predatory, and businesses to understand how to engage with veterans.
Mm.
Because it's, I did like a short presentation to a networking group. They asked me to come in and speak, and I did. I talked about the veteran consumer, the veteran employee, and the veteran entrepreneur. And somebody in that group was just like all excited. He's like, it still sticks with me, like
Good.
he goes, I really think about that stuff. And he's connected me with other people because of it. But yeah, if you can
We'll talk.
understand how to unlock that, you'll have loyal. It's a you build it right, and veterans will follow you and the
Hmm.
story. And
Yeah.
it's authentic. It's not. It's just be real.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. But
that's
yeah, it's kind
awesome.
of that's where I was at. And if it wasn't for ATF, to be honest with you, if it wasn't for that gym, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Not with the connections and the resources and this and that and this. And I mean, it led me to coming, to this, with coming home well. And it's a special place.
Yeah.
I
It
tell
is.
people, I tell people, I don't know if you're a believer or not, but I am, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But walking in there is like smiling at God, and you can see him smiling back at you.
You're like, here we
With
are. Let's
with
go.
people that were in wheelchairs there was a guy in the wheelchair for 11 years, and by week 4 of his training, he was walking. Week 4. So You
Because it's
can't tell me.
connection. It's you connect, you know. Actually, I write a blog and I'm actually finishing this article right now. There's a research, it's a Harvard study, it's a longitudinal study. It's the
Mm,
longest one that's ever been 1938, I think it started.
mm,
And you know, longitudinal studies, they do different research out of it, you know, with the
mm,
population. And one of the things that they just published this not too long ago, year or so ago, and they said the number one thing to people's happiness, it is not money or status or any of that stuff. It's connection.
mm.
And it's not like connecting to 100,000 people. It's this quality connection.
Yeah,
And if you have these good quality relationships, it is shown that you will live longer,
I love that.
which to me is just enormous for veterans. Because what do? Isolate, hide out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the opposite. We are
Yeah.
trying to like somehow protect ourselves. So, like, this is like my whole thing. Like, let's just show how to come together and
Yeah.
trust yourself, read people, learn about them, and make these really quality connections. So, yeah.
And when you get them, keep them.
Right. Like, I got you.
So, likewise. Well, I don't mean to cut you short, but I have to
No,
get ready for my day job.
you do. You
I
have to go
gotta
to
leave in
work.
like 15
10
minutes. So
minutes.
I gotta get my ass out of my pajamas, showered, and in my stuff and out the door in 15 minutes.
You got it. You're all over it.
Those sea showers, those 2 minute sea showers, I have to do one today. So
See, soft skill set. There it is. You
I
can
know
rock it out now.
it's been a joy.
It has been a joy. I think this is awesome.
Yeah.
I think we'll have to do another one sometime, I think.
Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right.
it. All right, Dee Tox. It was a pleasure, and we will talk to you soon, okay?
All right. For everybody out there, peace out.
Peace out.